Right. We are reaching the end. You've seen my colleagues showing you the whole application journey with the help of NGINX, how it can be used as an application and a web server, a proxy and a cache, and how you can easily add security and API management on top of it, and then how you can also get a global reach and redundancy for your application. Now, this is what we will be ending this day with. A way for you to get the most complete visibility of your application delivery in near real time. First of all, because you usually forget at the end, right? Everything that you will see in our demo in about 6 minutes, you can try out live. So sign up for a 45-day free trial and experience all the current, not bacon, but beacon capabilities. Okay, so I would like to start with a question to all the viewers. I would like to ask you, what is the most valuable thing that you have in your private life? Now you're probably thinking, my family or my kids, right? And if I ask you, do you know exactly how many kids you have? Do you know where they are at this right moment? Do you know if they are in security at right this moment? You probably have some idea, right? But what about your work life? What is the most important thing or the most valuable thing in your work life? Now, I probably do around 200 meetings a year. And when I ask this question, almost everyone in my business, they agree with me when I say applications. Applications are the most valuable thing because face it, there's not a lot we can do without our email, our calendar, our CRM system, business system, without our applications. But now, when I ask my customers, do you know exactly how many applications you have? The answer is usually no. Do you know where they are at this right moment? The answer is no. Do you know if your most valuable crown jewels, the applications, are in security right now? They don't know. Customers that I meet are struggling with visibility. This is the organization's most valuable thing, the applications. They have no idea how many they are. They don't know where they are. They have no idea if they're secure. They have no way of predicting the cost or doing a forecast. It's Are there instances running in the cloud somewhere? How much do they cost? Are they overutilized? Are they underutilized? Are they about to crash? They don't know. So that is what we are about to talk about right now, and that we will demo in just a minute. But let's just talk about the challenges a bit more. The applications are everywhere. And one application can be deployed in one way in Azure, but in another way in AWS. And there's no easy way to move the application, and you have to rewrite it for different clouds. And it's very hard to get visibility. Plus, people are working in different silos with many, many different tools and different vendors. There's no way of getting a consistent view of everything. And we're going to look at what that can look like. But I just want to mention that just developing the actual application, that's only half the job. But actually delivering it to you and to me in a secure way with the secure access. And to you and me, we are used to response times like or the speed of Google and Netflix, and that is the hard part. Bringing it out to you and me, that's the other half. Sometimes it's even harder when you're using different platforms and tools and then it becomes even harder when you're adding all the latency and troubleshooting and complexity, and of course, once again, visibility. Right? What does your infrastructure look like? When I meet customers and when I ask them this specific question, this is an example of the answer that I very often get. This is the typical application journey, the screenshot that you see right here. Customer or the end user somewhere on the right, and the actual application on the left. You can see there's a lot of different vendors. There's tools on many different platforms. Now, this does not only cost a lot of money when it comes to hardware and software and services and training, but also latency. It takes a lot of time for this end user to actually see the application, and it's extremely hard to troubleshoot. And again, no visibility. I've met banks that tell me that when their most important application goes down, it can take them minutes, hours, days, weeks, and sometimes months before they can actually figure out what the problem is, where it is, and what went wrong. Again, lack of visibility. And what's actually happening internally? Support. What's happening between different teams? You always know it's always the network's problem, right? It's the network's fault. But what I'm showing you here is kind of a representation of a typical incident, highlighting all the steps that's normally taken to resolve the incident. The more time spent on finding the cause of the issues and fixing or pushing a fix to get it back online, the higher the customer temperature or the stress out there trying to get the problems fixed. Now, one of the key areas that Beacon focuses on is minimizing this time by pinpointing where issues are to help drive the issue resolution quickly. Now, F5 is the best at monitoring F5 solution. And when I say F5, I mean NGINX, of course. So F5 and NGINX, we're all one big happy family. Beacon provides end-to-end application visibility, monitoring, analytics across all F5's products and services. I would like to say that there is no other vendor in the market that has the same in-depth knowledge into our different solutions like we have. And yes, we can monitor other third-party solutions as well, of course. Right. F5 has been helping customers since the beginning of the 90s, making sure that the applications are fast, available, and secure. NGINX is doing the same thing for the new world. It's perfect for multi-cloud containers and microservices, being extremely small, powerful, and lightweight. So small it can fit in a floppy disk, inside the container. Now, we also have Beacon to provide you with the visibility and monitoring analytics across all of the F5 products and services, plus third party. Now, what does it actually look like? Here, you can see how F5 Beacon can fuse telemetry data from across the F5 product portfolio to help customers and empower them with actionable insights, to get visibility, to get more control, being able to do the right forecasting and prediction for the future. Big help. Now, over to Adil, and after that, some demoing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Åsa. Hi, everybody. My name is Adil. I'm the PM for Beacon. And before we kick off some awesome demos, I know that everybody's waiting for them. We will briefly cover just some of the capabilities of Beacon. These capabilities include app modeling. This is our topology mapping for apps, user experience monitoring, and overall app visibility over the health and performance of those applications. And finally, actionable insights. So let's drill down in each of these capabilities in the next slide. Åsa has done a fantastic job articulating sort of what the problem statement is, the challenges the customers are going through, the operational complexities around environment, architecture, lack of user-centric monitoring, the many solutions that customers are deploying within their environment, these all lead to lack of visibility, right? That's a given. That's what we heard from a lot of customers as well. How does Beacon help, right? What some of the capabilities that can help address some of these challenges, right? So a Beacon allows customers to model their applications to understand better the component dependencies and how each of these components affect the overall health and the performance of the application. Secondly, around end-to-end app visibility, Beacon provides insights into the health performance of those applications and also includes end user experience monitoring, allowing for different synthetic tests. Finally, Beacon offers a set of insights analytics to help customers easily and quickly pinpoint where the issues are. This is alongside the value propositions around reducing the mean time to innocence, right? Reducing the mean time to repair for customers. And we leverage sort of these insights into a set of analytics, a set of anomaly detections to help customers quickly get down to where the issues are. Now that we have just a high-level overview around these capabilities, I want to hand it over to Forrest, who's going to walk us through some amazing demos, and I can't wait for them. So over to you, Forrest.
All righty, so this is the starting page for F5 Beacon. It's an application map where you can see where your applications live. Let's select our Houston region, which has our space application that we've been going throughout today's demos. Here's a preview pane that kind of shows you the application map we were just talking about, the health history, different events that have occurred within this application. Let's drill in a little further into the detail view. So here within the detail view, we have a number of tabs across the top, and let's review them. So the application map shows you your application and its dependencies. You have the JSON configuration, which is Beacon's declarative API. It shows you a preview of how you would configure this application if you were using the API services. You have health and events, so you can see the health history as well as the different events that have happened, the insights associated with the application from the metrics and analytics, and then your metadata properties. So going back to the application map, we can see the top level of the space application right here. We have our APAC region, which is a child dependency. We have our Houston region, part of the application. And then we have our Beacon synthetic monitor. And the Beacon synthetic monitor is a probe which Beacon can go and hit your HTTP or DNS endpoints and return status and metrics of those. So let's check out what's going on with this one. We selected it. If we go down, we can see the server processing time, HTTP request time, and these are just some of the metrics we chose to show here, but you have DNS response time and others. And then we can derive health from these metrics. And the health status is for getting the expected payload. And we'll go through setting up one of these synthetic monitors here in a second. So let's look at Houston a little bit more. So Houston region, we have a virtual machine that's running all our containers and our services underneath it. So we associated the virtual machine with the Houston region. We have the CPU and memory coming in, and we're deriving health from these metrics that are coming in. Then we have our WAF NGINX App Protect and Cache LB proxy, which are actually the same NGINX Plus container, but we logically broke them up into different components so that we can associate different metrics with each one to help identify where an issue may be. So let's go ahead and look at the WAF NGINX. We can simply see the number of rejects here. If we're monitoring the number and it goes above an anomaly level or threshold, Beacon error. If we look at the Cache LB proxy, we can see the number of HTTP requests coming into each zone within NGINX Plus. We have the space WordPress front end, and then the Node.js API underneath. And then we have NGINX unit and the services running underneath that, WordPress and the API. We have our API gateway and a database underneath it. Let's go ahead and look at one of the service containers. And here we have the CPU of the container. You can see it's not being taxed too much, probably a lot of caching going on with NGINX to help save the CPU. So let's go ahead and go to the dashboard view to see all these metrics in one place to help correlate them. So we have our application map. with our synthetic monitoring on the right-hand side with those same metrics, so we can see it all in one place. Next to that, we have the HTTP requests that we saw. We have the rejects from NGINX App Protect. We have Docker system stats, so number of containers and images. We have the container system, the stats of each container, CPU and memory of each container running on this VM, and then the VM stats itself, the CPU and memory there. And this would help us correlate if one thing is causing another issue. Okay, so in the last demo.
Real quick, if you don't mind, like how deep does that rabbit hole go when it comes to figuring out like what's wrong with an HTTP response? Like let's say, for whatever reason, every day at 6 p.m., I'm getting like a 3-second response time. And I want to drill down into my app now and figure out like, well, okay, well, maybe because it's like a database query, because, at that time there's some background job, like, whatever, something's going on. Like, is there any way to get into those metrics or no?
Yeah, so actually, we're going to go into it a little bit in the demo, and the amount of metrics you can pull in is through the insights is enormous, right? So any part of our third-party integrations, anything that comes in from our third-party integrations, you can visualize. Anything that comes in from NGINX API, from NGINX Plus or NGINX Open Source, or the big IP, you can drill down to each one of those and control it. So you can look at, like you said, response. You can look at response headers, payload, response codes, etc. Good question.
Thanks. But just to be clear then, there's no way to really dive deep into like the application level, like what happened during that, during that request before the response actually was made? Like what caused that response to be so slow?
Yeah, so you can actually, once you can correlate everything together. So on that dashboard, if we wanted to see why the request was slow, we could actually see that potentially the CPU was high on the server because a new process was running. So we could highlight that as the reason why. There could be a varying number of reasons. And that's kind of the purpose of what Beacon is trying to highlight, is that the response may be slow for what the user sees, but it may not be because of the request they sent or anything wrong with the request, right? It's trying to correlate everything together.
Hey, Forrest, thanks. I imagine that the application map was auto-generated by the system where it went and detected that. Is that correct?
So different parts of service discovery are on the map for Beacon, are on the roadmap. Right now, since Beacon can be automatically updated with the metrics, and since it has the declarative API, you can use that to integrate as part of your CI process to update the application map as you update your applications themselves.
And the second part on that question is, and that's what I wanted to confirm, is you can go and then and manually modify the application map in case you have some dependencies that may not be otherwise clear as part of that chain. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so if there's something that's not blatantly obvious based on labeling or tagging, you can come in and either update it through the portal or the declarative API.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we were going to integrate the DNS Cloud Service Load Balancer. So here, we're going to go ahead within the integrations page, select Enable Integration. Since it's part of the same F5 Cloud Services portal, we are now getting the metrics and health data from our DNSLB that was set up in the last demo. So now let's go associate that metric and health with our application by creating a component. We'll go back to our application map. We'll select our application. We'll go drill down into our space application. We'll go into edit mode. And this, speaking of, this is kind of what the question was about. We're going to go add the DNSLB. So we're going to select the top level of our application, create DNSLB. We're going to go add a metric health condition. And the metric health condition says we want the health of this component to be dependent on what comes back from the health status of our monitor within DNSLB. So we're going to select our space NGINX A record LB, hit add, and we're going to select save. And then you can see our component has been created down here. If we go ahead and exit out of edit mode, we can see how the health is rolling up to the top of our application. DNSLB is green because the health status of our integration shows healthy right here. It's showing a value of 2, which is considered healthy to Beacon. So our different integrations with Big IP and NGINX can show you a service as health status. You may have critical, warning, offline, no data, etc. You have different metrics for these to help analyze and visualize and correlate and detect anomalies associated with them. So now that we've done this, we probably want to go and configure a synthetic monitor to check and see if Earth exists. Let's use that as an example, right? If Earth doesn't exist, we'll consider that a critical failure. So we're filling out a new synthetic monitor for Beacon. We want it to exist. We're going to do an HTTP request to our API endpoint for planets. We're going to do this every 30 seconds. And then we're going to say, hey, let's look for a specific response string match of Earth. And if Earth doesn't come back, this monitor should fail. So not only is it going to check for that, but it's also going to check these metrics, response time, HTTP response time, SSL negotiation time, etc. So you can see it listed here on our page. Let's go back to our application and associate this with our Node API. We'll go back into Space. We'll go into edit mode. We'll go over to our Node API. In Houston, we'll select edit node. Just as before, we're going to go to metric health conditions, select add. We're going to pick our source as a monitor, and you can see a lot of the other sources here, database, memory, CPU, etc. We're going to select our monitor. We're going to select the source that we want, which is our Earth monitor. We want to check if Earth is available, and if it's not, we want this API to be considered down. Or if it's not responding at all, it will also be considered down. So let's go ahead and select add for metric health condition. We'll select save. And then once we save the entire application and exit edit mode, we'll be able to see that it is in a healthy state, which it was before because we weren't monitoring this specific use case, but now we added a new one, which is returning healthy. But say we want to simulate it failing. So we go to our API, which shows Earth coming back, which is what it's being successful off of. Let's go ahead and remove that. Let me go ahead and refresh after I remove that. Okay, so Earth is gone. So in Beacon, we should go see what that looks like. If we go back over to the portal, we see that the Node API is down, and that health has rolled up to the top level of our space application through unit, through the cache LB proxy, through the WAF, through the Houston logical zone of our application to the space application. So we can see that the Node API, it did not return the correct string. It is still successful in terms of the HTTP request, but the string did not return properly. Okay, so let's go ahead and add Earth back. Okay, there we go. It's updated and back in the API. So we should be good if we go back into the Beacon portal and everything is showing healthy again. We can see this within health and events. You can see the chronology of what happened. It got a failure status because of it not getting the expected string response. Then you see where it came back up. You can also see the health timeline above. You can change the resolution to day level and get a little more granular into what happened, why it went to warning, critical, etc. Okay, so Beacon has synthetic monitors. Beacon integrates with other cloud service offerings, but how do we grab data that is not accessible from a SaaS offering, from the internet? So how do we grab the Docker container stats that are within here, the NGINX specific stats of the CPU and memory, et cetera, that we were showing you earlier? Obviously, that's not accessible directly from the internet. And we can use some of our open source integrations. So here's the VM in Houston. We're running an open source data collector called Telegraph. And with only a few lines of config, you'll see how we can get all the data about this application that we were showing you. Within our telegraph.d folder, we broke up the configuration into multiple files to make it a little bit more readable. So here first, we're going at our Beacon config file. It says take any data that we collect and send it over to Beacon. We use your token to identify and associate it with your account. So now any changes we make to Telegraph go into Beacon. Within our, for Docker, we just say grab our local Docker instance, check it for the response of all the Docker containers, CPU, memory, etc. Send that over. For NGINX Plus, we just point it to the local host URL for the API that was enabled in NGINX Plus. Grabs all those stats for all the zones. For SQL of the WordPress instance, we just grab the database right here. We just connect to it, and it grabs all the metrics associated with it. We don't have to tell it which ones to grab. It grabs all of them. Of course, you can filter it if you want to. And then we're tailing a log file with Telegraph and saying anything that has the outcome of the request, if it's rejected, blocked, etc. We'd like to see that and send that over. So we can grab event logs also and send those over into Beacon. So with maybe 20 lines of config, we have all of this data from this application going in. Okay, it looks like we just got an email from marketing saying that there's a new campaign talking about how awesome our website is, and we should expect a whole lot more traffic. So we should go check into what's going on there. Okay, so the Space app is down and it's in critical state. We can see it starting at the cache level proxy, going up to WAF, to Houston, to the top level of the Space application. We can see a synthetic monitor looks good. And just as important, what's down is what's not. We can see that the beacon monitor is still showing successful. The APAC region as a whole is showing successful. Like I said, DNSLB is all good. So it's good to isolate that as not the problem. So we know not to get those teams on the call. If we look at the NGINX HTTP requests, we can see there's a drastic increase in the number of requests from about 3,000 per service to 12,000. We can see NGINX app protect rejects are the same, so we're not getting any more rejects. The Docker system stats all look pretty stable. The VM memory went up a little bit from the increased load of the requests coming in, but nothing too significant. So let's go over to the detail view to see if we see why this is in a failure state. So let's go over to our application. We'll select it. And it says right here on the summary, actually, the most recent event was that the number of requests to the zone for the web service is over our critical value anomaly of 5,000. So if we go to the health and events, we see the same alert here, along with all the other alerts and the health history. So since this is microservice and scalable very easily, as shown in the other demos, let's go ahead and scale this out. And luckily for this demo, Adil is not only the PM for Beacon, but also the operations for this application. So I'll go ahead and ping him again and scale it out. Last second, of course. So we're going to scale this out by 4 times. All right, so he's going to be scaling it out, which will allow us to take a higher number of requests. So now that it's scaled out, let's update our configuration to expect higher number of requests or allow for a higher number of requests. So we'll do this as if we were doing it through the API. Everything else we've done has been through the portal. We'll edit the JSON config as if we did the API. So right here, you see critical threshold, warning threshold was set to 5,000, which is where the error was. I updated the critical threshold to 20,000 and 18,000 since we've gone up 4 times. So if we save this, Beacon should now be okay with that level of requests coming into NGINX. So let's go back over to the application map and see how it reflected on Beacon. Okay, everything looks green. We go back here. Cache proxy is now available again. So I hope with this demo, quick demo, we were able to highlight a lot of the benefits and how quickly and easily you can integrate Beacon into your application daily use, your operations, right? How can I identify quickly what is a problem, and actually just as importantly, what is not a problem, so I can only pull in the right people to the problem. With that, I'm going to pass it back over to Åsa.
We're just going to finishing off with now is just this final slide. So as you can see, we have native integration with F5 solutions. As you can see, we have 5 big IP, big IQ, the DNS, low balancing CS, and we are constantly working on adding more integrations down the road. As you also can see, Beacon is focused on delivering analytics and insights, leveraging application telemetry. And this allows us to provide value across both old and new application architectures, and also across a multi-cloud environment or multi-cloud environments. Additionally, we have a very robust and an open ecosystem, as you could see with Telegraph, for example. And this allows us to diffuse data from as you can see, commercial and open source technologies such as Telegraph. I really hope you enjoy the demo, and I hope you are curious. So just, again, go in, sign up for a 45 free-day trial and experience all the current Beacon capabilities.
Okay, I don't want to pry too deep into this one because you kind of answered it mostly in that talk. But I don't know, I'm still having difficulty figuring out when I would use Beacon over just using something like Datadog directly and getting all of my metrics and insights in one dashboard there.
Well, Adil or me, I just want to say that I don't think there's anyone in the market that has the same in-depth knowledge like we have when you look at the different modules like ASM, the Web Application Firewall, APM, Access Policy Manager, and all the different modules. I don't think there's anyone that has the level of insight that we do have. But over to Adil and Forrest.
I can jump in on this one.
Yeah.
Asa and Nick. So yeah, there is definitely sort of, at the end of the day, this is an F5 service, right? So it goes without saying that anything in terms of monitoring any F5 solution, including NGINX, including all of the services that F5 has to offer, big IP, etc., we do a great job at, meaning that it's about the depth of the integration, not just the fact that there is a check mark saying that, oh, we've accomplished something with an integration with a vendor, right? So that's number one. Number two is that how do we integrate even with the F5 solutions, right? So yeah, we have sort of an ecosystem open source, right? So we're really engaged with the open source community. We leverage some of the tooling that they have, like, for example, Telegraph, Fluentd, etc. But if you take, for instance, integrations with F5, Big IP as an example, as a side example, is that we leverage our own ecosystem and orchestration tooling to actually ingest data or metrics from those devices, those instances into Big IP. Something different in terms of the best practices of actually leveraging metrics from those solutions, right, that you see with other vendors. And finally, the other thing is that everything we do has an app-centric view to it, right? So this is where the beauty of correlating and giving the customers an easy, at-a-glance view of saying, how is my application performing, as opposed to, oh, I saw a log entry that says I'm receiving 500 errors. Should I freak out and jump to conclusion saying that my end users are all impacted in all regions, or should I look at how is it actually affecting my application? So that's the difference in terms of the philosophy between Beacon as a monitoring and insight solution, as opposed to other solution. Don't get me wrong, Nick. Other solutions do have sort of visibility, but the approach that matter, right? And as a matter of fact, you mentioned Datadog as an example. We do integrate with Datadog. See, that's where we are, right? We're not fencing Beacon as the only solution that the customer needs. We're positioning it as, yeah, this is, in order to actually even improve your visibility footprint above and beyond what you have, Beacon is the right choice for that, right? And we allow those integrations to sort of mature over time. So that's all I have to say about that, Nick. Hopefully that covers it in terms of just the approach, the philosophy, the strategy we're taking with Beacon, and also how we're complementing all these capabilities together, especially when it comes to correlating metrics and bubbling up the health and performance all the way to an app-centric view.
And the NGINX controller is just about to be there as well, right?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely correct. Yeah, it's a work in progress. And we're trying to make sure, similarly how we cover third-party solution, we're making sure that the rest of the F5 as a whole from a product and solution portfolio is also well integrated within Beacon. Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that often comes up, and I don't want to dig too deep into it because it's the topic of licensing, and I don't want to ask, unless you have an easy way to kind of depict how licensing kind of is broken up, but I'm kind of curious are these things bundled as part of a package? Are there a la carte portions of it? How much of it's kind of incorporated, included as part of NGINX Plus versus, separate independent pieces? Stuff along those lines, just if you can share how that can ease adoption in some environments as people are looking to leverage pieces of the puzzle, or maybe not all the pieces of the ball.
Well,
Adil, it's almost for free based on what you get, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So Chris, let me first touch on Beacon. First of all, Beacon is a SaaS offering, right? So similar to DNS load balancer. And this is, again, Nick, another thing that I just want to highlight in terms of how we approach things, right? So we allow customers to ingest as much metrics as they want into the Beacon service, meaning that ingestion is free. You can right now, if you have an environment with, let's say, 1,000 of instances, let's just call it, or source of data, and you want to just ingest all of those metrics into Beacon. Maybe you're not ready yet to leverage those metrics into an app or create insights out of it. That's fine. It costs customers $0 to do that. So all the ingestion is free. And that's in terms of sort of just differentiating the market, that's a huge thing, right? So you don't have, as a customer, you don't have to worry about, well, should I really ingest this instance because it's not part of the mission critical, but if I added more, more metrics is gonna be sort of uploaded, is it gonna impact my pricing? No, simple answer. The way that we price, to Chris's, back to Chris's question, is the way we price Beacon is quite simple. The more apps you have, right, which is an easy thing to do capacity planning, to do pricing on, that's what you pay for, right? So it's based on the number of apps. The more apps you model and create in Beacon, that's how you get charged. The other sort of factor also in pricing, Chris, is insights. So one thing that Forrest mentioned around insights is, hey, I have all this metric. I want to correlate sort of my NGINX Plus CPU against my NGINX Plus requests. That's an insight in itself, and that's how we charge the customer. So the more they create, the more that that they get charged. So that's the approach we're taking with Beacon. So straightforward, easy to do capacity planning, easy to do pricing calculations.
Okay, so on a related topic to that though, a lot of other vendors, log retention is like a big focus of price, right? It's because, well, maybe you can get logs for 7 days, but if you want them for, 6 months or a year, suddenly it's like, 100 times the cost or whatever. Is that a factor with your setup too or no?
No, so we don't, our retention as it stands currently, Nick, is 3 years across the board.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking things more like from a business point of view, and I see this kind of end-to-end visibility being something that's asked a lot by businesses. And also what I'm seeing in this kind of enterprise environments is that they have this kind of connected environment where each component has its own SLA. So when those SLAs multiply, you see that the uptime is not as good as business thinks that it is. And also what I see in this kind of setup, like filling in the information, is quite taking a lot of time. So do you have any tips for those organizations?
Around the SLA, Kathy?
Yeah, around the SLA
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I'm going to say, because this is based on just the conversations I have with customers, right? So lots of customers, with their digital transformation, they're moving workloads off to the cloud, right? I mean, but, expecting the vendors, at least if they adopt some sort of, SaaS offerings primarily, right? That, there are SLAs there that the vendor, in terms of the shared responsibility model in cloud, especially for SaaS, it's a given, right? There's SLAs. The vendor is the one responsible for sort of managing, operating that sort of those services, and they handle the SLA. Some customers, they just want to keep an eye. Is really the vendor still abiding by the SLAs that they've contracted for, right? So that's just one aspect where just because you're sort of cloudifying your workload does not mean that you're losing visibility or you're losing control. You still can make the vendors accountable for the services that they're offering for you, even within sort of the shared responsibility model in cloud computing, right? So that's just one aspect. The other thing is that within Beacon specifically, Kathy, is that there is the notion of at least currently, there's notion of an uptime percentage, right? So each application, even the space application that Forrest showed us, we calculate and roll up an actual uptime percentage for it, right? Automatically. You don't have to worry about it. It's based on sort of the really the health of the application over the course of any period of time. So if you select, for example, 30 days, the last 30 days, it's going to pre-calculate that for you and say, this is where your uptime is at any given time. So hopefully that helps, Kathy, in terms of addressing your question.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks.